Hey Bailey, taking a look at your assignment for this week. I'll break it down into chunks. I'll be looking at body motion and eye mass stuff. Yeah, so let's get into it. So the first part I'll look at is...
Yeah, what's your deal? I haven't seen you before.
Oh, yeah, I just...
Up until this part, how about? It seems like a fine bit of phrasing.
Yeah, what's your deal? I haven't seen you before. Yeah.
So I'll look at the body first.
I haven't seen you before. Yeah.
I feel like all this is looking good. When you get in there to spline it, I think there'll probably be a bunch of little hitches and bumps that we'll be able to kind of like eliminate, like right through here. I'm seeing there's some like left to right motion, maybe in the torso that maybe is just a little bit of an errant key. Let's see, where is that? I'll mark it. I'll mark it. It's just something to keep an eye out on. And you can really see it. It like rocks to the right here. So I'll just make a little notation of that. It's not a big deal. I feel like that'll be taken care of in cleanup stuff, but if you want, you can clean it up now. I'm also seeing that, that's being reflected down here and like where the elbow makes contact with her lap. You can see that there's kind of some play there and stuff. So that's probably just like an errant key or something to be cleaned up. I like this anticipation on the chest dropping here and the head dropping. But it feels like if we're really getting into the intimacy of this and the nitty gritty, is like when the head and torso drops forward, it kind of stops dropping and then it drops a little bit more. Or the spacing seems to speed up. So again, when you look at your curves, something is dropping here. That's a combination of this, and probably this is all working together to kind of rotate forward, to kind of like anticipate this move up, which I think is the right call. But when it starts to like drop forward, it seems to kind of... This is a big spacing change. So if you pay attention to stuff, let me zoom in here. Like, here's your neck. Here is your neck. And then I feel like I'm going to start drawing in purple because I feel like we're starting to have really reduced spacing in here. And then all of a sudden we get our bigger spacing back. Maybe it's because this is still on 4s right through here that is kind of grabbing my attention, maybe. I don't know. But let's take a look at that in ghosting and see how that... Ooh, what happened here? On is what we want. Yeah, so I guess I should have traced this one out. So from here to here, it feels like an ease in, which is nice. And here, the spacing is bigger, which is nice. It feels like we're dropping down. But then here, the spacing is really small, and then it gets large again. So you can probably, that's going to be probably caused by a combination of curves between the chest, the upper torso, the neck, and the neck. It may be additive kind of stuff causing that spacing, or maybe it's just that your neck curves are a little unresolved yet at this point. But I would love to see, it may behoove you to like kind of clean this stuff up before you get into spline. But what I'm imagining we'd want to see, and it's hard to do that exact same kind of treatment for the chest, but on this pushback here, it feels like maybe the top of the chest is dragging. When I say the top of the chest, I mean like this kind of like torso shape here. Like her rib cage is what I'm kind of always thinking of, right? Where this will be like the center, and then this is like perspective back in space. And this isn't exactly the midway point I've drawn this, but whatever. Just trying to get across an idea. Then the idea is that when she pulls back, maybe the top of this drags just a little bit, which I feel like you have in there, maybe. But that could also be built in to this like lean forward, is maybe like the top of the torso leans forward a little bit with her. And I don't mean, it doesn't have to be a ton, right? So if like this is where her torso is here, you know, whenever that neck rotation is, even throughout here, it could be just a little bit. So like maybe this is where it was. We're dragging it just, you know, a few degrees behind, but you'll feel it. And it'll feel like that motion of sitting up and everything is originating here at like the base of the spine, right? Because that's really where that kind of movement is going to come from. Like if this is her pelvis bones, right? Like the thing that's causing this lean back is going to be coming from this waist area. Anyways, it's a tiny little detail, but as long as you're thinking about neck spacing, that's probably a good time to think about. Because like this, where the crown of the head drags, and I feel like maybe that's supported by the neck, like that motion in there is super nice. I really like that. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm just trying to like plus that or keep that same idea generated both in her rib cage and upper torso and her neck. If it's not there, I can't tell if it's on the neck here or not. And to me, it almost like doesn't matter because it works so well through this move. So anyways, that's a small thing. And I think too, when you start doing this like lean back, like right now, I see that this shoulder is kind of jumping up. Let me switch colors again. Like here, we're planted on the leg here, right? And that feels like a really solid contact point. And like, I'm really feeling that like a lot of her weight is here. There's also additional weight coming down here on this arm, but I feel like this one maybe has 2 times the weight as what this one has, right? I don't know why I feel that. I just feel it. So like when she starts to lean back and stuff, it might be nice to like drop this shoulder a bit to try to maintain this contact, at least for the beginning part of this get up here, right? To make it feel like there's still weight, like she's pushing. She's using kind of this shoulder area to push down to help. I mean, most of it, like I said, is probably coming from the pelvis and spine, but some of it can come from that arm. So I would delay that coming off the leg until maybe like around here, and then this is when maybe, you know, you don't want to like over crank the shoulder and make it look weird. That's not what I'm saying, but maybe, you know, the elbow comes off first before the hand comes off, and then the hand comes off kind of like lastly, you know, in order to do the readjust over here on her thigh. Okay.
What's your deal? I haven't seen you before. Yeah.
But overall, big picture, it's working really well. These are like just like little final kind of look notes on body mechanics, and maybe stuff to go for or think about while you're splining it, you know. So here, there's like a big drop down on that screen left shoulder, and I'm not really seeing like what's motivating that or where that's coming from. So maybe I was wrong too about, oops, my apologies. Maybe I was wrong too about like where the weight is right now. Maybe it isn't. If this elbow isn't making contact with the leg, then there's no weight coming down there at all. So that's fine. I don't have like a preference, you know, because I really feel like this is the stronger read of like where the weight is. But If that's true, I'm not really sure what's motivating some of this screen left shoulder, like dipping there. You know what I mean? I would just try to keep that simpler by either having the shoulder stay in this pose and not be in this upper pose for so long. You know what I'm, keep accidentally clicking on things. Anyways, all right, let's look at the face mask here.
Yeah, what's your deal? I haven't seen you before. Yeah, what's your deal?
That's cool. It's stepped, of course, so we don't have any in-betweens. But what I would suggest,
Yeah, what's your deal?
a couple
Yeah,
things.
what's your deal?
Cool. Let's really get into the eyes and the eye mask and see what we can see here.
Yeah, what's your deal?
So, let's see. Let me count some frames here. 1. So this is still stepped on 2s, which is fine. I think if you're gonna just do this as like a little eye dart, which is kind of what it seems like, I would just have it go over in 2 frames to wherever you choose it to be, and then like hold that, right? So I think this eye dart, I would take that out. I would just have it be small. And eye darts are really fast, right? They happen over like 1 or 2 frames tops. So to have this happen over 4 frames feels, I don't know, like incorrect. And even if she's looking over this way, it's nice to start that look over before the blink. But here you go. 1. Yeah, it should be seen like right before the eyes close. That the eyes are starting to move screen right. So how I would do that is I would have the eyes doing what you're doing here. Let's say this is your pupil. When you want to start the blink, that second frame maybe, you know, have the lid start to move down, have the pupil start to move over. So the purple is kind of like the second pose in this thing, and then have the third pose be like the eyes closed. I don't think you need to make sure that all this eye stuff, they're like really fast twitching muscles. You know what I'm saying? So when you go down into this blink, all this is great, but keep the eyes shut for more than just 2 frames possibly, or if you're going to do it just for 2 frames, we want to see them shut, and then on the second frame we want to see that there's some kind of like compression, right? So have the top lid almost like push the lower lid down a little bit, right? And if you can, if you have any control over like this area of the eye, if there's a control, it would be nice to kind of like lower that a little bit. Another thing you can do to help show the compression of a blink is just have the eyebrows dip a little bit and have them involved in the blink. And you can even have the eyebrows like precede the blink. So if this is where you're going to start your blink here, on the frame before or the pose before or whatever, have your eyebrows just start to dip. But what we're trying to show here by doing all of this stuff is we're trying to show a compression. We're kind of trying to show a little bit of compression here and a little bit of compression here. So like this line is a landmark that you can use for that compression. The brows are something you can use for that compression. And even if you have any control over like this area of the face, like here, like you can see that there's like this landmark here, you can use that for a little bit of compression, and it'll just help make the face feel a little bit fluid. And you can absolutely overdo it by like squishing the eyes up too much, you know what I mean? But if you just feather it in there a little bit, it's going to make it look like there's just a tiny bit of fleshiness and stuff, elasticity to it. So if this is where your eyebrows are here, right? Let me switch colors for this yet again, right? when you go back to this pose, they're really getting smaller, right? Horizontally, because like this is kind of where they were. So you're shrinking like that much distance, and that is kind of weird. So I don't know if it's pushed too far this way in this pose, or if in this pose it's pushed too far this way, but I would get more parity between those two poses, because really what you're trying to show is if like this is your eyebrow down. Let's see here, let me see. Yeah, if this is your down pose on the blink, you know, when you go up, this feels a little bit more in line, right? Like something just like that. You want it to feel like they're being pulled up from like kind of this area here, like this third. I should do that in purple. This is kind of where the muscle will pull up, and you get like, this is an exaggeration, but you'll get like an arch shape out of the brows if it's being pulled up there. So that could use just probably a little bit more shaping. I don't know if this inside bit here is being pushed to one side, or if that's what the rig's doing when you pull it up, but there needs to be some kind of like parity in that. All right, looking closely at these like lid shapes, if you can shape these lids, I would get this lid. You kind of want the apex more like on top of the pupil, so you want the apex to be more about here instead of having this like thing dip in here, right? You want it to be more like coming up and apexing here. So see if there's a control where you can shape that part of the lid on the outside. And then with this one, you do have to like kind of, and it would be nice, sorry, let me continue this with this line. Like this line here feels aggressively like sharp, and how it cuts off the pupil and the iris. So see if there's any way to shape this to just have it be like a little bit more open. You know what I'm trying to say? We still want like simple shapes with the lids. We don't want them to get too S-curvy or too complex. You know, we want them to kind of read graphically or whatever. But you really do, every time your character is going to like change look direction, you have to like really pay attention to how these lids are shaped. The same goes for eye aims. Like, I know it's tempting to think that you can just put your aim control off in the corner and then have that like work, because the character is technically looking at the same thing, but that's not how it is. So what you'll have to do here is, I feel like this iris is getting cut off a little bit by the lid. So you kind of want more of the iris visible here, and that's going to make more of this pupil visible here. And so what that's going to mean that you're going to have to do over here is leave the look aim, if that's how you're doing it, there, but drag like this circle over individually so that everything's in the right spot. I like the lid shaping here on this screen left eye. I think that is working, because the apexes of both of these lids are more or less where the pupil is, but it's getting a little buried in the corner. So yeah, let's see. Oh, also with these like brow movements, you're gonna have to like in between them. You know, like we're not gonna be able to just pop from one to the other. So even in steps, you know, we should be not quite at the high mark yet, but then when these eyes open, that's when the brows should like come to their resting spot. And even if you want to like proceed it a little bit, that's fine, but we're going to need like in-betweens for these things. So if this is your final resting spot, the previous one can just be a little bit, you know, hinted lower. But again, we're talking about the difference of just a tiny, tiny bit. But all this stuff will keep your character feeling like their face is fleshy and alive, you know what I mean? So here, when you do this, you know, we're going pretty radical lower lid shape change here, and it's a kind of a complex shape change. So if that is hinting of a kind of a smile, that's okay, because when people smile, they do kind of have their lids shape up. But I would simplify this shape, and I would tie in this with the pupil move. So here, you know, I would leave this shape a lot simpler. And then I would also start to like move her attention or focus over in at the same time with it, you know. But here, like if you look on your screen left eye, there it seems to be working much better as far as like the lower lid is still keeping like a really nice simple shape to it, and that's kind of what we want to look out for. That's kind of the ideal, right? So she comes over here to like have some internal thoughts, right? Like she's noticed him. Also, yeah, so she looks down and then over. Let me see how that plays. I didn't notice that before.
Yeah, what's your deal?
Yeah, so you kind of have to decide where is the speaker. Like make sure that you know that, because if the speaker's standing, this looks like she's looking up at someone maybe who's like here, right? So her eye line's going to a speaker who's up here, right? But it's also possible that this speaker is seated and kind of at a similar eye line to her here, right? Which then when you go here, it looks much more like she's looking at a seated figure here. So just pick a spot where you're know where your look direction should be for consistency, right? Like is this person seated with her? Or is this person standing and talking to her? Your audience won't probably register that consciously, but they'll feel it. You know, it'll have a slightly different feel to it if she's talking to someone who's seated at like a communal coffee table space in a cafe, or if somebody was walking by and just started to chat her up. All right, I don't want to spend too much time on this one section here, but I like her eyes are turning here. Feels good. That feels like a nice timing. Again, I think we'll just get a simpler, it'll be stronger just to get a simpler graphic shape out of this. Always be careful when you're showing whites like above the eyes, because that's going to give like this like crazy horse look to it, you know, and we don't want her to look crazy. We want her to look relaxed. So you kind of always want the top lid to be like riding the top of the pupil if we're in a relaxed state here. So that might mean pulling the lower lid down a little bit and then lowering the top lid so that you get kind of like the same. It doesn't look like she's squinting if that's not the intention, right? So it's always going to be some kind of play between the top lid and lower lid and how much of the pupil you want to be showing. Yep, and then let me look at the brows a little bit. That's fine. So one thing you can do too is when you go in here and do the brows is you can kind of give this a little bias. You know, this is like a pro tip. What you want to do is make it feel like it's opening up this way, because that's her look direction. And one of the ways you can support this is kind of by having this brow be a little bit lower than this brow. You still want them to feel like there's a flow happening between the brows and that they're still like connected. But you can even, like, if you have a way of scaling this eye here, you can scale it a little bit so that even though you're getting a similar squint, it just feels like a little bit, you don't want to see it, you want to like feel it. But then you get like this nice kind of perspective in like how they're looking. And then you can do, the thing that made me think about it is that you can do the same when she looks I mean, this isn't a strong look to the left. This is more like a look down. But what I'm feeling here is that we have this brow lower than this brow, which makes it feel like this when really we shouldn't. We shouldn't be feeling that at this point. This should be where that doesn't feel this way, I guess, is how I would say it. Cool. I think there's like some little spacing hitches and stuff as you're doing this, like right towards the end here. I really feel this belly part kind of like come forward there, when I feel like that maybe should be happening more like throughout this part. But it's not a huge deal, you know what I mean? But maybe when you get into the spline, keep an eye on what this kind of like abdominal region is doing, and maybe start that coming forward like sooner than like at the end, you know. I don't know if that's a pelvis rotation or what's causing that impression, but so again, okay, I think I'm already on to the next part. Yeah, because this is before the dialogue line starts.
Oh, yeah, I just transferred.
Cool. We'll stick with this. I'll open up a little bit what we talked about already, because
Oh, yeah, I just transferred.
it would be nice to see some kind of change in the eyebrow or attitude between the end of this and the beginning of this dialogue. And I know you have some eyebrow change here, but what's happening here isn't super clear to me about like she's going from what attitude to what attitude. I also feel like these shapes are maybe pushed a little too far and maybe a little too asymmetric in this case, like feeling that this is a tough connection. You know what I mean? This makes me feel almost like there should be some anger involved with having those middles kind of be so pointed down or something, and then they just seem to go out. So keep an eye on like what you're trying to say with like each of the things, but like going into this, I just transferred like this maybe could be a little bit more pushed into something like this. I don't know if that gives her an attitude that you disagree with or an acting choice that you disagree with. If so, that's fine. But maybe she's saying like, oh yeah, there's like a little moment of vulnerability here. Like, how are you going to react to me saying these things to you? So maybe here she can be coming up and being like, well, what am I going to say to this guy? Like maybe here, you know, it's more relaxed. Her brow is here, right? When she comes up out of this like thing, like what am I going to do? And she looks over at the guy here and she makes a decision, right? Like this is almost a decision point. Like, okay, I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable to this guy to try to make a connection, right? It's just like human nature and subtext. So maybe she goes from like something that's relaxed to something that's a little bit more like open, you know? And so I think you can show that by just having like, this would be like the relaxed brow, and the open brow could just be like slightly adjusted. A lot of brow changes and stuff won't be seen if you do it like during a big body shift or a torso adjustment. So you kind of have to like wait for her to come to a halt. Like coupling it with this like little head adjust, I think would be a good choice, you know, just to have it be pulled up and arched just a little bit. And then when she goes into this, she's saying like, yeah, I just transferred, like, please be kind to me. Don't, I'm being a little vulnerable by engaging you. I hope this isn't a bad idea kind of thing. You know what I mean? But anyways, I should be looking at the body first before I get into.
Oh, yeah, I just transferred. Oh, yeah, I just transferred. Oh, yeah, I just transferred.
Yeah, I think this torso move here has a lot of like little
Oh,
clicks and hitches. So So when you get into spline here, I'm sure you'll find them. But this one seems to go like screen left and then right again. Here it's like coming up. So it goes from like up to left to right, like in a pretty short time without a lot of ease-ins and ease-outs. I hope you can see that, but if just in case, I'll do some tracing. So like if I'm looking at this point and this point, right, like, whoops, here, seems like it's almost going to the right. And then it starts to go to the left here. And then it goes to the left here again. And then it jumps pretty big over to the right. So if I turn on ghosting, we're going to see some spacing. So you're gonna have to work that out when you spline it, about if you want to keep that left motion in there, that's fine. You're just gonna have to ease in and out of it. Or, you know, this can all be just going up and then to the right and just make it a little bit simpler, you know. I think when you do this shoulder shrug up, we're gonna need to support it. I don't know what's happening here. I'm not sure how to talk about this without using the word chest or breast, but it looks there like her chest or breast actually grows over that one frame, you know what I mean? And what I would want to see instead is this feeling that, like, yeah, her shoulders are pulling up, but I also want to feel like her whole torso is kind of lifting up a little bit. So if this is where it was, it feels like it's more or less at the same spot. You know what I mean? Like maybe we can also like support this with just a tiny bit of like torso up and down. And if you're doing that in IK, you can just translate that spine IK controller up. Or if you're doing it in FK, you can actually scale or move sometimes those FK controllers, and they'll actually lengthen the torso a little bit. But anyways, that's a small thing.
Oh yeah, I just transferred. Oh yeah, I just transferred. Oh yeah, I just transferred. Oh yeah, I just transferred.
It feels like the head movement on transfer is a little late. Like, that's a nice move. It feels like it's just coming in a little late to me. Let me turn up the volume so I can hear. Suggest maybe where I would put it. I think I would start it around here, like 132 instead of 138. So I think I would move it probably like 6 frames sooner. That's a suggestion. And of course, if we're doing the torso up thing, we want to feel it also like kind of lose the height here. I feel a little bit of a height loss here from the torso. But yeah, it's not in between if it's in there, you know what I mean? You also have this, so like if I'm looking at the center line of her torso, it kind of reads like this, right? Like right in the next frame, it like kind of snaps over to the right. And it's not like in between over to the right. I drew it poorly. The way I drew it, it doesn't look like it snapped over at all, but the landmarks are like here, where this armpit hits, kind of comes over to the right. So I don't know. It feels to me like we're jumping over a little bit here. So maybe you'll see that in your curves. clean this up just so the notes are clear. Yeah, it kind of feels like we're twisting over the right all of a sudden. Like here, like we come over, go into this gesture without any twist, and then boom, all of a sudden there's like a twist that doesn't. So there's no in between, there's no ease in. It feels almost like an errant key or whatever. So I don't know that you need that little rotational change there. Okay, I'm going to move forward so this doesn't grow into a stupidly long critique, because I want to make sure I can get through everything. We're already 35 minutes in. Holy cats.
Yeah, I just transferred.
Okay, cool. I'll stick with this phrase.
Yeah, I just transferred. Yeah, I just transferred. Yeah, I just.
Okay, cool. I think for this, yeah, I just transferred. I think like wherever her brows are before should be more on the relaxed or down side. You know what I mean? So when she goes into the yeah, I just transferred, maybe that's a good opportunity to get them open, like get her brows open, you know. And whatever this shape design is, it's going to be up to you. Whatever you feel like looks good, works with her face. But maybe, yeah, she's going into something a little more like this guy didn't say anything back to her to make her feel like he's a dick or that he's making fun of her or whatever. So, you know, this is maybe her waiting to see how he's going to react. And then when it seems like he's actually listening and interested, maybe she can have a little. Unless you're trying to do an eye roll here, which maybe you're trying to do with the pupils, which we can talk about. But if you're trying to like break eye contact with him, I see what you're probably trying to do. Okay, so let's talk about this, if I'm reading this right. I would do this earlier on transferred, and you're gonna have to like lift up the eyelids to make this work, right? It's gonna have to be like looking up at the ceiling. So if she's breaking eye contact with him here, you really want to feel like she's breaking eye contact and trying to be like, yeah, I think that supports like the read and everything. I think my eyebrow notes still apply here where we're kind of like lifting them up. But yeah, here we're like looking at the ceiling like, and again, because I'm suggesting you do the head movement earlier and everything, like I think that would have to be earlier. Okay, back into it.
Yeah, I just transferred.
Okay, let's look at the body first.
Yeah, I just transferred. Yeah, I just transferred. Yeah, I just transferred.
I think this is working. I know I haven't been giving you a lot of notes in this section.
Yeah, I just transferred. Honestly, like.
I think one of the things we can do to make this like lean forward and now she's catching herself like a little bit stronger or communicate. So one of the things is like with this reach forward, I think I've said this before, I want to get this shoulder clavicle down a little bit lower here so that as she leans forward, we see the clavicle like rotate up and kind of like take that weight. And I'm not saying that it needs to be any more up than this final pose here, but I feel like if this is going to be our final pose showing that she's put weight on this shoulder, then our earlier pose should be a little bit more down. So we're showing that shoulders kind of like absorbing weight. And at this point, you know, we kind of want to like lock wherever the wrist is going to wind up. We kind of want to like lock the wrist in the spot so that it feels like, you know, all that force is coming down through that arm and supporting her weight there.
Yeah, just transferred.
I like what's happening when you pick up this hand like that. I think that's great, but I feel like we're picking it up really high off the lap, and then it's jumping over really far. You know, so what I would do is once you're here, start the move over in the next poses. You know what I mean? So this hand could be like here, where the wrist is like already driving, kind of like where we need to go. And then here the hand would be even farther over. I mean, this is a really nice hand pose. It's really great design work. That's a really nice pose. It looks great in perspective and everything. So I love this, you know. But it's just like the spacing of how all this stuff plays out feels a little sudden. And even with it going down on the couch, it feels kind of sudden, you know. Like I don't know where it would be, but I would feel like we're not quite there yet with getting that hand on the cushion yet. So yeah, I don't know what the exact solutions are. I don't know that these are the exact poses. I'm just trying to communicate an idea here. But watch the spacing on that hand coming over, because it seems to like go up really high and then zip down to the couch like incredibly fast. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I just transferred. Yeah, I just transferred.
Yeah, I really like.
Yeah, I just transferred. Yeah, I just transferred.
A lot of these poses feel really great.
Yeah, I just transferred. Yeah, I just transferred.
So, what do we want to do acting wise when we go? I like how the brows come down in this moment here where she's like, am I really going to say this? Am I really going to tell him? Now we're going up here on honestly. The hair is like a bit unfortunate that it'll cover up the brows if we go much higher, but I think the amount of change we're getting between here and here is pretty subtle, which I'm okay with it being subtle in parts, but I wonder if we could push these up just a little bit higher, but I don't know. And also if there's a chance when you're raising up the brows, if you can raise up kind of this line a little bit with it, you know what I mean? So as the brows go up, maybe this line goes up, feeling like there's also a force pulling up on this meaty area that happens between the lids and the brows, you know? That would be awesome. But I don't know if your rig has that level of detail control in it. I feel here like I feel the pelvis like tipping down, the screen left pelvis here seems to have a move that I would just eliminate. It does make sense to me that like more weight would be going onto that leg, or there'd be lower half of the body kind of things happening at all. In fact, here, you know, when I watch this marker, that landmark, that feels to be rotating a lot. And I think that this would be pretty still, and that the rotation would be happening more from like her rib cage upper spine area, and the lower would feel pretty stable, especially when you have kind of like this triangle happening here. That would be really stable, right? But I feel like we could get rotation out of the upper torso and stuff. But I feel like the motion, the quality of the motion is correct, you know? And this is like really nitpicky stuff. So I'm going to move forward from here, because I also don't find it to be valuable to overwhelm you with nitpicky notes.
I guess you could say I'm kind of like.
I like how soft
I guess you could say I'm kind of
and
like.
smooth this is,
I guess you could say I'm kind of like.
because it's a real like intimate moment. It's like a vulnerable moment, and I really like how you have this eye direction going from here to here, right? It feels like she's looking down here, kind of, and now is when she's braving some eye contact with him. because maybe she wants to see how he's going to actually react to things. So I wouldn't mind too if you actually like lower her gaze a little bit here, like maybe she's breaking eye contact to like look down, and so we kind of like push this contrast a little bit. You have it in there, which is really nice, but then we would kind of like push that into this, because this is really nice, and those eyes are good, pretty well shaped, especially the screen left one, you know, feels pretty well shaped. This one could probably use a little adjustment to get the apex up over the pupil, but it's just tiny. And then I would try to stay away from like this kind of eyebrow thing where one is down and one is up, just because that doesn't really strike me as a sincere pose. It feels more like actory or posy kind of thing, and it kind of lacks a real life sincerity. And I think that especially through this moment, this feels like a really great sincere moment. You know?
I guess you could say I'm kind of like. I guess you could say I'm kind of like. I guess you could say I'm kind of like.
I really like the choice to have her lean back here too, because it feels like she's almost preparing for a punch or something. Like, is this guy? I need to be a little bit protective of myself.
I guess you could say I'm kind of like a wayward soul who's. I guess you could say
Yeah.
I'm kind of like a wayward soul who's.
Now
I
there's
guess you
some.
could say I'm kind of like.
There's like a complexity in the head move here, where the crown of the head, by the crown I mean the top of the part, goes to the right, and then it comes back to the left. And this is a really complicated bit here that happens over a couple frames without a lot of in-betweening. So I would just simplify this bit of head movement in here, or make it more like specific or defined, because I'm not really sure what's going on there with some of those head rotations.
I guess you could say I'm kind of like a wayward soul who's.
This raising up of the hand here feels really slow. I love this hand pose here, and this positioning and everything I think is great, but it feels like it takes a really long time to get the hand up here. And one of the things I would suggest too is not only shortening it, but like kind of dragging the hand, here, you know what I mean? Like, don't lead with the fingers, but actually like drag with the fingers as this comes up. So then when you get here, there's a little bit more contrast, like when you flip it over, you know? Like here could even be a little bit more like relaxed. And again, I'm not saying like do these exact poses. I don't know that these are the correct poses. And drawing hands is hard anyways, but you know, like maybe yeah, and this last pose here feels like super earnest and like honest. It's really nice. I think that's where I'll leave it for now, because it's 15 minutes and yikes. But yeah, this is all great progress, and keep moving forward, and I'll look forward to seeing it next week. Okay, hope you have a good week and a good Thanksgiving, Bailey.